covered a lot of the information on Gensler, so let's kind of run quickly through it. The person that you're seeing on the screen is Art Gensler. He opened started Gensler at 1965, 50 years ago, with an office, a small office in San Francisco of 3 employees, providing interior design to commercial clients. 50 years later, we are over 4,200 employees, and spanning across the globe. So today we are in 46 locations and in 14 countries. Gensler is divided into practice areas. There is many clients from different practices, spanning from schools, education, airports,
stores, hotels.
Yeah, and of course the workplace, which is a big majority of Gensler. Our scale spans immensely. I mean, from graphic design for a wine bottle to high-rise, second tallest building in the world in Shanghai.
Our firm does a lot of research. It's really important to us as a firm. And the type of research we do spans all of the project types that we do: higher education, airports, health and wellness. But the particular one that we'd like to point out is our annual, or I think it's every 2 years, workplace survey. And we have been conducting this for the past 10 years. And a lot of what we want to show you today are things that we have learned in that research program. When we want to tell the stories of the projects today, disclaimer, we didn't work on all of these projects. We worked on some of them, and we'll let you know which ones. But the projects that we're showing you range across the whole entire firm. And they start with the sort of concept of work and how people are changing, to what the office looks like, to what the buildings that house them look like, to the cities that house the buildings. And so within those stories, hopefully you'll get to sort of see what we're seeing as workplace evolves. We're going to start with work itself. And we're going to start with a little bit of a history lesson. So white-collar work, which is really the sort of office work that we all know, has only been around for a little over 100 years. And the sort of thinking that shaped that type of work at the time was developed by a guy named Frederick Taylor, who devised a system called scientific management. And it was inspired by the Industrial Revolution and factories, and it was all about thinking of people as units of production. And then at the very end, you see, very tiny, a space that Frank Lloyd Wright designed for the Larkin Company. And it embodied all of those principles that were so important at that time. Fast forward to the 1950s and 60s, when there was a lot of change in the United States. At this time, the thinking about workplace changed from being process-oriented to sort of being a little bit more strategic on management. And at that time, in 1960, white-collar workers took up about a third of the workplace. Other things were changing. After the Second World War, we experienced, a nice economic time. That sort of created this mass exodus out of cities and into the suburbs. And companies like IBM and Bell Labs were creating these really large campuses with all these amenities to try to lure people out. Architecturally at the time, the international style was really popular. You see a lot more glass on the face of high-rises, and that became a symbol of corporate America. Also at that time, there were a couple of inventions that were important. Fluorescent lights, acoustical ceiling tile, and the cubicle. And so that sort of ruled workplace for centuries. It feels like centuries, only decades to come. In the 1980s, there was an economic depression, and at that time, people started realizing that they can't stay committed to one company for the rest of their life. In the 1990s, technology started to sort of free us from the bonds of our office, and they required that we do things a lot faster and a lot smarter. At that time, about half of everybody's day was spent working alone, and people saw that as a really big problem if we were to sort of survive in this new world of faster, quicker, better. And so a big focus was on collaboration. Today, the workplace attitude has changed. It's a lot more casual, it's a lot less hierarchical, and it's way more socially connected.
So one of the big trends that we're seeing today is reduction of square footage per person. If you're seeing by this diagram in 1970s, so in the 70s, an average square footage per person is 500. Today, we are only at 176 square foot per person. So that's about divided by 10, about 18 square meters per person. Another big shift that we're looking at is generational shift. As baby boomers are retiring, many of the millennials are dominating the workforce. 2020 is predicted to have 50% of the millennials occupy the US workforce. 2030, 75% of the global workforce. So the high demand of this generation brings to kind of a war on talent. You can see in the diagram here the ratio of employees moving from one one firm to the next. These are right here the main technology companies currently in Silicon Valley, and really interesting to see how often do employees cross over. So there is a great effort to keep and nurture these employees within a company. So if before, up till now, work and life balance was kind of the main theme, today we're just seeing an increased integration of both work and personal life.
So we mentioned before about our workplace survey. And so the things that we've been finding, especially in the last 5 years, is that it doesn't look that good. Most people are not very happy with their workplace. We have survey responses from almost 100,000 people and 140 different companies to get this information. And so that drives a lot of the change that we're looking at in our organization on how to fix those problems. Yeah, that's 53 million people. Just in case you like that better than percentages. So now let's look at some of the things that we're seeing as maybe they're trends or they're things that are common in workplaces today that we think might be a sign of hope. One of our clients asked us if you can operate your entire, pretend this is an iPhone, if you could operate your entire office off of your phone, then why even have an office? We think that it's important to have offices, but their meaning is very different today than it was a few years ago.
So Me to We talks about the shift of personal space toward shared space. Mobility was this hot thing that was sold as this hot thing of providing the perfect balance between work and personal life. There was also benefits for the companies as so many of the square footage was reduced. Just an example, HP in just a couple of years shed close to 50% of their real estate worldwide. So what we're seeing currently is really noticing that the mobility trend has really created a disconnect of employees. Employees that do not come to the office are reporting feeling disconnected and disengaged, having to come to the office and interact creates a lot of collaboration and eventually, engagement to the culture of the firm. Marissa Mayer from Yahoo had called her Yahoo employees back to the office. That statement created a lot of criticism and created a lot of headlines. What we're seeing today, though, is a lot of manufacturers are spending a whole lot of effort to think about ways to bring employees back to the office. A perfect example is Nokia. This is a project we've provided them in their new campus in Sunnyvale, Silicon Valley. In the space that they were before, it was a ratio of 80% of the space was individual space, and only 20% was shared spaces. In their new campus, we moved from that ratio to almost 50-50. They spent huge effort in providing many of the shared spaces, starting from the ground floor that provides as a conference, the majority of the space provides as a conference center and event space, to the typical floors that every floor has kind of a social hub at the center of the space, just off the elevator lobbies, to kind of provide that message of shared space. UBM is another example. This is United Business Media. It's obviously a business media company, UK-based. When moving to San Francisco offices, they moved from private offices to tiny workstations, going down, reducing the square foot per person for 80 square foot. Although the space was very limited, pretty generous shared space again was introduced to the space. One in the center of the space, kind of more of a quiet and collaborative zone, and then the second space adjacent to the exterior with the cafe, a conversation pit, and outdoor seating to both dine and work. This is Silver Lake, again a financial firm in Silicon Valley. Since we were realizing that employees on different floors have a very slight chance of interacting, companies are spending a lot of money to open up slabs, provide interconnecting stairs to create that connectivity between floors. Even law firms are changing. Currently, most of the law firms do have perimeter offices, so that hasn't changed, but the reduction in the storage, reduction in need for library and high-density storage areas, the ratio between lawyers and the admin is going down. That allowed for a lot of collaboration spaces. So even there, we're witnessing that. REG is a kind of extreme example of this sector. This is a UK-based law firm that our London office actually worked on. And here, they really completely rethinking their work environment, moving to all open plan and providing amenities throughout the space.
Another big change that we're seeing are actually people who aren't associated with a particular company at all. So this is the independent worker or the contract worker. And we're expecting that number to rise to over 50% of the workforce by 2020. What's happening to accommodate all those workers? Usually they would go work in their home or a coffee shop, but that's really not quite the sort of innovative space that they need. And so co-working facilities have been springing up to help these workers, to give them more than just a desk, to give them access to other people, other disciplines. So you might have somebody who is an independent lawyer sitting next to somebody who's writing a screenplay, and then they start talking, and the next thing you know, something happens between them from a business perspective. And so it's that type of interaction that we think creates really good product and hopefully innovation. So our Chicago office designed this co-working facility. This is in the Chicago Merchandise Mart, which is the home of Neocon, the big furniture show every year. The place is massive. It's named 1871. That was the year of the Great Chicago Fire, which of course devastated Chicago. But on the flip side of that, great things happened after that. And so that inspired this group to name this space what it is. It's very industrial looking, but you could work anywhere. There's a variety of places to choose from. And then what's really cool about this space and other co-working spaces is that as a community, you can get up and you can sort of share some of your knowledge with people. So at the end of the day, they have wine and cheese and presentations by people. And so you learn a lot, you meet new people. This social aspect of work is something that we're now realizing is really important. Okay, so this is where it gets really kind of not so good. We mentioned before about our workplace survey, and we show that people really aren't productive. They're not happy with their workspace. And this is no surprise to any of you, but right now, with all of this information and all of this stimulus, we cannot find a place to focus, and that is what everyone's number one complaint is. There's a sad statistic that every 3 minutes, we're interrupted either by another person talking to us or our device talking to us. And so then when we finally get back to the task at hand, it could take up to 23 minutes to do that. So, this is something that in some ways, we like to say the pendulum has shifted. Where in the 90s, it was all about collaboration. Now we're realizing that we need to actually also focus on focus. So perhaps it's the end of the radically open office. It kind of used to be that, well, you just put this big open space, you put a lot of desks in there, and everyone's going to collaborate, and it's going to be wonderful. That doesn't work so well for everybody. So what we're seeing is that, yes, open is good, because you do overhear things, but we need to provide other types of spaces that people can choose to go and do the work that they need to do. And how those focus spaces look can be very different. It's not going back to private offices, and it's not always in a room, because sometimes people need to work and they need to focus, but they want to see what's going on. And other people need to see them. Sometimes you totally want to hide. And so we're designing a range of workspaces with furniture and with walls and all types of places that people can go and hide and do the work they need to do.
Telling a story. So beyond having a beautiful space and the space meeting all the programmatic needs, firms are wanting to kind of the space to tell a story, tell something about them, about their culture, about who they are, for both employees and visitors. What we're seeing is no one wants to be corporate anymore. I mean, before the request, the seek for creative spaces, we heard only from ad agencies or technology companies. Today, we're hearing it from real estate and professional services. In the future, we're predicting, and we're seeing the start of that even today, of law firm and even government spaces requesting creative offices. I think the people are recognizing the power of design. Creating a space with a story really is one of the most effective tools to engage employees and have them relate to the place they work in.
Okay, so Batya and I are both living in California, which, like Israel, there's a lot of tech companies. And it's really interesting how the tech companies want to convey themselves to their employees. And so this is Facebook. I actually did work on this project, and it was totally mind-blowing to me, because what they asked us to do is they asked us to hold back the design. We don't want it to look like you designed it. Which is kind of sad to us. But what they were really trying to do, what the story that they were trying to tell to their employees was, yes, we're successful, but we haven't made it yet. So when you look at this image, you see walls that aren't even finished. You see a lot of open things. And so, as much as I didn't enjoy being told, don't design, when I walk through the space and I see that there's art by graffiti artists and there's personal expression, I actually can understand how free people feel working in the space. And that's exactly what they wanted. We've got a few more things here. So it's a very sort of different approach. It'll be interesting to see as this evolves, as companies like Facebook grow up even more. Are they going to stay with this? Are they going to start to evolve as their look and feel? Today, more than ever, people want to feel connected to the company that they work with. They want to share the same values. Whole Foods is a really popular grocery store in the US that sells organic, healthy, sustainable foods. And in their headquarters in Chicago, they just, like a lot of companies, they just go right out and say, this is what we care about. But I think what's really interesting is, because they're a grocery store, they want to constantly remind their workers who they serve. And so right off the work area, they built supermarket shelves so that you're never disconnected from your end client. Airbnb is another firm that we've done a lot of work with in San Francisco. I read today that Israelis are in the top 20 countries that love using Airbnb when they travel and they go to other countries. So I think many of us are familiar with them. But what they did in all of their shared spaces, they built each one out like one of their listings. So here is a kitchen somewhere in the world, but their meeting spaces, they all look like an apartment that you can get in Barcelona or New York. So it's really interesting. Again, it's who they serve.
So this is our Gensler office in LA. This is one of the new offices that Gensler has opened, and probably one of the best examples presenting Gensler and our culture today. Right from the start, it was very important for us to convey our culture of being open, transparent, energetic, and most of all, collaborative. This is kind of a different example, UBM as well, reception area. Here the story is translated into art installation. You can see on the wall the art piece in front of you is basically butterflies cut out of old magazines. Here the kind of stories UBM telling their visitors, how they're moving from the printed media to the digital media. So here kind of the butterflies are flying towards the digital screen. So Salesforce. Not always do we get to develop the story and choose how to translate it best into design. Salesforce is kind of a good example of where we inherit a concept that was already built by the client. Here the CEO of Salesforce, Mark Benayev, came with the inspiration of Hawaii as a concept to be implemented in the spaces. For him, it was representing a culture of hospitality and the clients first, and they wanted to shy away as far as possible from like the typical corporate culture of Microsoft, where he came from. We've done work for Salesforce worldwide. We even worked with here in Tel Aviv with the Rita Axelrod on their location here, and they're growing immensely. So right now it's interesting to see we're working with them and with our branding team to come up with a new ideas to kind of refine that concept and make it, more suitable to the growing company there today. Want to talk about that?
So we've kind of alluded to this, but right now the workplace is really all about giving people a choice of where they want to work. Because if we want them to come back to the office, we don't just want to make them all sit at some workstation that doesn't perform for them. We want to give them choices. So we have a few examples for you.
This is again the LA office. So this is, I think, a really good example of this type of typology of space. The idea was really to create large, open, flexible areas for to adapt to different modes. There is many options to work in the space, from your individual desktop to various meeting areas, open collaboration areas, a quiet room, which they call the tea house. If you flip to that's the tree house, sorry. And focus booth, and again, cafe areas that can spill out to a larger space for events and all hands gathering.
So down in LA, the weather is way better than in San Francisco. And so places that have good climates like that can also take that idea of working anywhere and expand it to the outdoors. And so here's an example. These were really boring, conventional office buildings in an office park that the developer wanted to make it more attractive to tech companies. And so Gensler came in and we reclad the buildings. We gave a little bit of a roof here to protect it from the rare days that it rains, but helped to create this outdoor space. And we're seeing this more and more, and it's really a nice place to work. Now we're going to talk about sustainability, but we're really going to frame it from a human perspective, and that's about being healthy, but more importantly, being in a good place, feeling like you're taken care of, a great sense of well-being. And we have a few things where companies have tried to make this better for people. This is your project.
So this is Sequoia Capital, and this is, sorry about the renderings. We didn't have a chance to replace them before the presentation. And this is under construction currently. Sequoia Capital is a VC firm in Menlo Park. It's behind many of the major technology companies. What they were, I think were really nice working with them. Their focus on well-being was very important for them. Here we're showing there was a huge expense on moving the structure, opening large openings in the slab to connect between floors, and then above them opening up to many skylights that were integrated into the space to maximize natural light. They were also fortunate to have an option to spill outdoors. So, there's various areas within the space where nano doors open up and provide a great area to sit and work and dine outdoors. We're seeing that a lot of different amenities are provided for different work environment. This is an example of yoga room, nursing rooms. This is REG again, providing healthy food. A lot of companies are moving to providing free healthy food for employees. Even doctor offices and clinics.
So I feel like I'm always describing the problems with workplace. But one of the problems with workplace is that we all sit too much. On average, we sit about 7.5 hours a day. For some people, that's more like 15 hours a day. And I've heard recently that people are calling sitting the new smoking. So this is something that people want to change. We know that it is physically good and mentally good for you to move around throughout the day and actually change your body posture. So there are some ways that companies are doing this. One is, I think, more expected, to providing outlets for entertainment in the workplace. This is Autodesk. They make BIM, they make Revit. To places that at the individual workstation, they've got the sit-stand option. This is not inexpensive, especially if it's automatic, which is the best way to do it. Batya's project that she showed before, Sequoia, they're actually committing to doing 100% sit-stand workstations, which is a good thing.
Both offices and open work area.
Some companies may be taking this really far by creating some workstations where you could actually jog while working. I've never tried this, but
I did. It's horrible.
It's horrible, I would imagine. But I think it's fun, and I think it does, give people a little bit of relief. Something that we're seeing so much in California, I don't know if you're seeing it as well here, but it's almost expected that if you're a young company and you're a tech company, that you will have a safe place to put your bike, and you will have showers and lockers. And so now we're trying to think of all these cool ways we can actually store and display those bikes. Broadcom is another Los Angeles-based firm, and they're building a campus. And so they are looking at both the interior and the exterior as places to sort of move around and exercise. And so this will be a really compelling concept to think about how you can scale that down to, a regular office size. And then I think Batya and my favorite object of design is a stair, because a stair does two things. A stair allows people to sort of move up and down, they get some movement, but more importantly, stairs are places where people sort of run into each other. And it's those kinds of informal sort of collisions or collaborations that bring the most creativity to people. So this is, again, we're just bombarding you with photos of our Los Angeles office, but our firm is really proud of it. So, all right, let's talk about technology for a few moments. This is Motorola in Chicago. And one of the nice things that technology is enabling companies to do is to express their brand through technology. And so we say, that's great. But what else can technology do? How can it really improve the way we work? So one example, this is a confidential consulting firm in New York, but they, like many companies, when they had to move, have to deal with a lot of anxiety with their employees. Like, what's my desk going to be like? It's going to be the same. Is it going to be worse? Usually people don't think it's going to be better. And the traditional ways that we deal with change management, emails and posters, really aren't so suitable anymore. And so we created a video for these guys that was animated and it was entertaining, and it got over 1,000 views. And that was kind of funny because there were only 110 people who were supposed to move in this space. So what it did, though, is it got everybody so excited about the new space, they all want to move there, which, of course, made the facilities people feel great. So we expect to see more tools like that.
So another confidential large tech company, you can only
Yes.
guess who that is, has collaborated with Gensler to try and enhance and manage the workplace experience throughout the building, and keep going, and help the interaction with the building. Here is a kind of a screen, tells you once you walk into the screens, identifies you and shows you who is already in the office currently, and helps you through your mobile device assign your seat, identify where other mobile workers work, and book room for meeting spaces. Future-proof design. So future-proof design is really a design that, a workplace that meets today's requirements, but is designed in a way to be easily reconfigured to respond for future needs. Our findings show that mobile partitions or mobile building components can reduce cost by 60% to reconfigure in comparison to traditional construction. Here we're especially working with a lot of law firms to come up with components, because right now the office is still fixed, but trying to design in a way that will be future-proof. Here is a quick diagram to show how the large 3 offices can quickly become 4, and then eventually 6 to 12 team area space. Same thing with the multi-purpose rooms, having the rooms the flexibility to reconfigure and divide and enlarge a space to accommodate the needs. So in both Nokia and Google, we came up with a concept of neighborhoods. We put together kind of a kit of parts that you can keep flipping, you can kind of show that. So providing them with a kit of parts that they could pick and choose and build their neighborhood according to the needs, and be able to reconfigure easily, you can see, to kind of accommodate different work modes. Okay,
Now we're going to move up in scale to buildings. So we've seen how work has been influencing the interior design of our workspaces. We're also finding that those same trends are also affecting buildings. But one of the biggest things that we're seeing right now is that if more people are mobile and companies are generally taking up sort of less square footage per person, you know, even when they give it back as amenities, they still end up needing a lot less real estate, which of course, you know, makes them happy because they spend a little less money on that. But it does have an impact on new buildings, so it's something to keep an eye on. Now, you know, as designers, and a lot of the work that Batya and I do are interior spaces in buildings that already exist. Sometimes we work on new buildings as well, but we always are wondering, what is the ideal building footprint for this new type of work happening today? And it's really strange, but you know, buildings have pretty much been designed the same way for the past 50 years. Those of you who are involved in design will sort of understand this. If you look at this as the building footprint and you look at the gray in the middle as the building core, it leaves kind of two options for interior planning. You could put offices on the perimeter, and then open space next to the core, or you could reverse that. But the challenge is always, well, how do you get people to sort of connect and collaborate across these spaces? It leaves us and probably everybody wondering, you know, is there an ideal footprint for companies today, especially tech companies?
So we talked about that a bit previously. So really finding that if you are on separate floors, there's only like 5% you'll run into your coworker on the other floor, and when it's in a different building, it almost never happens. Can flip through. So having teams in separate buildings, even if it's on the same campus, teams are feeling isolated and disconnected to the rest of the team. We're recognizing the importance of not only physical connection, but also visual connection. Encourages immensely planned and unplanned interaction. So we're kind of rethinking the building core and asking, you know, whether really the best solution is it having it at a center building core, or maybe moving it off to one side and kind of allowing this large open floor plate for flexibility and community is more what tenants are demanding today. This is NVIDIA campus. Our San Francisco was currently designing a huge campus for NVIDIA in Silicon Valley on a large portion of their existing campus. Both Melissa and I, fortunate and unfortunate, to work on that project. The idea here is really that big is in. So the floor plates, here you can see two buildings, two-story buildings of 250,000 square foot on each floor. You can see in this diagram to the left, the typical existing floor plate of the existing NVIDIA building on the campus today, and taking that same footprint, duplicating it or tripling it, and connecting it via our central atrium. The next layer was really to place a hub, centralized hub in this atrium and create these paths from the neighborhoods to connect to that social hub. Huge efforts were put on, strategically locating the stairs. We went through so many researches as what location will provide maximum interaction and connection between floors. The CEO of NVIDIA declared he does not want any elevators on his project. So obviously it wasn't possible per code, but when they were scarce and hidden out of sight.
So what we showed you was what we would call a build-to-suit building. So it's a building designed for a particular company, and so thus, you can kind of do whatever you want and whatever suits the way that you think that your company is going to work for a while. Well, developers don't always have it this easy. So when they're trying to attract tenants, they don't know who they're going to get, and so they're trying to imagine if they build this new building, what would be the most attractive thing. Our Los Angeles office worked on this speculative office building to try to sort of bring it up to a point where it might attract a creative company and they might attract a tech company. So this is a video. I'm going to click to activate. Yeah. Oh, very nice. Okay, well, we're not going to play it again with the better sound, but you can kind of get an idea of what it was like. Let's see if I can just keep going with this thing. All right. Just bear with me for 1 second. There we go. We're going to talk again about sustainability. And so we know it's a great idea. We know that it helps to protect our planet's resources. We know that it helps the bottom line when it comes to saving energy. But what Batya and I are really particularly interested in is, does it actually help the way people work? So this is an example of a project that our office is doing in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And it is a project for PNC Financial, their bank. And for many years, they've been integrating sustainability into their branches, into their way of work. And they've been really pioneering this. And now they're taking it a step beyond. So it's a new building. It actually is, we can see there's a center cord there. But I think what's really telling about this is how shallow those floor plates are. And that's really shallow for the US. I don't think it's as shallow for Europe. But what that does is it allows for daylight to come into all the spaces where people are, and also to give people views, which is a really good thing. Pizzo. So Pizzo, who's not here in the room, but he gave a presentation earlier today. It was very inspiring, but he also had a breathable building, and that's a very interesting trend. The way this building breathes is, you can kind of see there are these glass panels on the side of the building that push out to let fresh air in. And then there's a solar chimney that takes that air and moves it through the building and exhausts it up at the top. And that, for Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is really cold winters and really hot summers, for this building to be passively cooled is a really, really, really big deal. And so what our models have shown us is that for 42% of the work year, we think that the building can operate in this mode. You can kind of see there, the light rectangles are those glass panels. We showed you how the building had this big center core, and Batya and I talked about, well, how do you create community when you've got that big thing in the center? And so how this building does it is, on every 2 floors, there's a big open space along the window where they've put all of their shared amenities, their kitchens, their meeting spaces, collaboration spaces, so that these places people can come together, enjoy the view, and have a conversation.
Hackable buildings. So we talked about our approach to new buildings, but what do we do with all the existing square foot of commercial space that is available? Currently in the US alone, there is 5.6 million existing commercial buildings. So our LA office came with a new concept that was presented and have us win the NIOP Award, Office Building of the Future. They're basically questioning the necessity of a new building as the only solution, and came up with this concept of hacking the building, not so much as technology, but more of a culture. Taking an existing building, in this case, they're presenting one as example, Union Bank building, that is traditional, classic building that the floors are repetitively stacked, and transitioning it to with an intervention into the building, inserting mixed use and allowing it to be to meet the demands of today's tenants. One of the interventions was having assembly spaces in the ground floor near the access, and then throughout the building inserting large staircases, opening areas, and having retail and residential live together, and having inserting a glass elevator that you can kind of experience the different mixed use as you're moving vertically throughout the building.
Okay, so our last concept in buildings is the idea of the third place. So third places there's many examples around us, but they're anchors of community life, and they help to facilitate and foster broader, more creative interaction. So a third place can be a really nice, dynamic coffee shop that you just like to go to because it has a great vibe. A third place could be a library. A third place could be your neighborhood pub. But we're realizing the value of these types of places to sort of create this culture of innovation, and we want to try to bring it into the buildings and the spaces that we designed. So in San Francisco, like many cities that have sort of a cool old history of manufacturing, we've got some old building stock that developers are trying to figure out how can they sort of take these buildings and reposition them for new types of work. So this building had an interesting life. It was an old paper warehouse in 1906, and then it became the Gift Center Jewelry Mart for years. It was totally tacky. And then now the developer asked us to sort of try to transform this building. And so one of our biggest problems, you can see the black and white photo, wasn't so much that it was, really hideous after years of all these sort of layers of renovation. The big problem was, how do you take this vast atrium space and make it feel like it's actually has life? Even if firms were to take those spaces, if you're just walking through this dead lobby, there's nothing worse. So we looked to the concept of that third place to activate that atrium with different types of workplaces that the whole building could share, a coffee shop, places to sort of stand and people watch, or to hide, or to work in groups, but mixing people together, and so you can kind of see the result. This is one of my projects that I worked on. And so the result is that it actually attracted Airbnb. And they took, unfortunately not the whole building, which is what the landlord wanted, but they took a nice portion of it, and it worked just perfectly for, you can see the brightly colored rooms and things that they have there that represent their listings. So it's working out really well for them, and we're pleased.
This is Kilroy Realty. It's who owns quite a few buildings in San Francisco. They worked with Gensler to refresh their lobby areas, the building lobbies, and outdoors amenity spaces. Here we're talking about probably not the best buildings in San Francisco. They're not Class A buildings, more like Class B or sometimes Class C. And they wanted to find a way to attract new tenants by providing the whole ground floor as building amenities. So it's kind of an extension of the work environment, having a variety of work areas to sit outside, a roof garden, and many conference rooms that people could actually meet with clients.
I lied, it wasn't the last section.
This is the last section. So you can keep going. So the last building that we'll share with you is probably our most famous one, definitely the tallest one. This is Shanghai Tower. That basically the concept of this building was looking at all the programs in a vibrant city and taking those programs and placing it vertically in one buildings. You can see by the diagram inserting sky gardens, residential area, residential floors, retail, and an observation and cultural facility at the top. And again, at the bottom was amenity space for conference center and large events. Another view of that tower.
And it's opening, it will open up at the beginning of the new year, so that will be kind of exciting.
So this is a view. Sorry, this is a view of the tower under construction. There is a very cool video of, if you have a chance to go into YouTube and Google it, of a group of Russian climbers that actually passed security, climbed up the building, 632 meters up the building, and
they
took
were
some.
on the crane or something.
Yes, they climbed on the crane, and there's some absolutely stunning views, and it's a really cool video. You should watch it.
All right, it's our last and final section. Now we're going to talk about an even bigger scale, cities. Do you want me to take this?
Oh, sure.
Sure. Okay, so we live in an urban world. In 2009, we passed the milestone of 50% of the world's population living in cities. By 2050, that number is supposed to grow to 75%.
This is a view from out of space, looking at the Earth from above, and you don't really see countries. You're seeing kind of the collection of cities and human
Activity.
It's human activities. Thank you. I lack the word.
So that brings us to our first section, city as platform for innovation. Steve Johnson wrote a book, Where Good Ideas Come From, and he said it really boils down to two things, the internet and cities is what we really want to talk about today. He says both environments are powerfully suited for the creation, diffusion, and adoption of good ideas. As cities grow, they become even more innovative. And I'd like to add on to what he said, that there's another two key components to cities that make them successful. One is density, but it's not density alone that sort of creates this hotbed of innovation. It's diversity, and so it's diversity of people, it's diversity of companies, it's diversity of thought. An interesting trend that we're seeing now is as manufacturing becomes cleaner and less polluted, it's able to come back into cities. And so we're seeing a growth in light manufacturing. So you have all of these things available to us in cities. And so how do you sort of harness that? It's like taking that idea of the co-working facility, but thinking about the city as that. Now, not everybody, but a lot of people sort of have this idea, I think maybe the media puts it out there, that innovation happens, it's like this epiphany. You know, I have this great idea and I want to do this. I want to invent Facebook. I want to do this. But in reality, innovation kind of builds on itself. In some ways, it's like doors opening up into other doors, right? And so you explore the palace one room at a time. And so without these little steps and innovations, you know, we're not going to get to, you know, to where we need to go. And so thus you apply that back to cities and you think about, like, how do you imagine all of these people as these series of doors opening up these opportunities for innovation? We are working on my office, not Batya and me, but we are affected by this project. It's a huge project. It's called 5M. It stands for Fifth and Mission. It's an area of our downtown that right now it's got some office buildings. It's got a lot of surface parking. It's got some homeless people. And so it's not being utilized to its full potential. So this project started a few years ago. It's been engaging the community into this. They've been doing a series of charrettes, so it's not just presenting them a design, but it's saying, what do you need? And they're even talking to the homeless people about what they need. They want to make sure that there's diversity in this. So when this is completed in about 10 years, it will have retail, it will have residential, it will have offices. Right now, what's happening, there is a major co-working facility that's there. There's an arts nonprofit that's there. And then there's tech shop. And I don't know if you have that in Israel, but it's part of the sharing economy, and it's a place where people can go and they could use expensive equipment, laser cutters and power tools and things that you wouldn't necessarily want to own on your own. And so you have people who have really good ideas that now have the ability to go and make something. And so that encourages even more innovation. City as amenity.
City as amenity. So an interesting phenomenon that is happening lately, we're seeing companies from Silicon Valley realizing that the talent they're looking for is actually preferring an urban setting and moving their campuses into the city, into San Francisco from Silicon Valley. The champion probably of this concept is definitely Salesforce. They currently have 2 large buildings that they're almost fully occupied, and currently the tallest of them all is under construction right now. So by the time it's built, they'll have this triangle of 3 major buildings in the city, and having the amenities of the city between those 2 buildings, they're actually taking advantage of that. So saving on amenities, and what typically technology companies provide their employees with, nice food and restaurants and amenities, using the existing and the new restaurants to kind of provide that for employees. They're coming with this new venture of new idea of providing food vouchers. Yes, thank you. Food vouchers for employees to be used in any of those restaurants. It kind of put a smile on my face, as Israel has been doing that for such a long time already. But there's a new startup for them.
So this is the exact opposite now. We're going to take you out into the suburbs. So like the company you just mentioned, Facebook is trying to attract employees who want to live in San Francisco down to Silicon Valley. They're getting on buses every day. And so they realized they had to take an old, pretty boring office park, this is the old Sun Micro campus, and make it feel like an urban setting. And so they had to provide a cafe. They brought in Phil's Coffee from San Francisco, which is super hot. It couldn't be like an off-brand coffee shop. It had to be something that everybody knew. Bike repair, pharmacy, dry cleaners, all of these things. They tore out the existing lawn and they created a streetscape between the buildings. And sometimes at night, if the weather is nice, they play movies out here. And so it's a very now urban, attractive place to be. Right next door to this campus, because they're doing really well, Frank Gehry is designing a new building, and Gensler is consulting on the workplace interiors. And so he's taking all of this activity and he's putting it on the roof. So we were wondering, well, is that good? We were trying to create this streetscape. And what we realize is now, because you've got this big campus and you have this new building, in a way, it's becoming like a small city itself. And so that's a really interesting thing. As people can choose where they want to live, some smaller cities, we anticipate, will actually become more attractive to people as they provide more amenities and more housing choices. So we think that's a really interesting thing. Here's the inside. We're going to bring you back inside to Facebook and look back out onto this dynamic streetscape. But it kind of, to us, epitomizes you know, where we've been and where we're going. We both feel so lucky to be part of a firm like Gensler that gives us access to all sorts of learnings from retail and hospitality and airports, because we're seeing where all of these things are kind of intersecting and coming together, and we're really excited about what the future will bring. Somebody said to me the other day that he thinks we're on the brink of a change that's as big as the Industrial Revolution when it comes to work, and we'll see what that has. But that is our presentation. Thank you.